Hello, and welcome to the BOFIN Buzz, the podcast for anyone fascinated by farming's future. Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to the BOFIN Buzz. Before we introduce this week's guest, I'd just like to point something out. Two BASIS members, you can now claim CPD points. So that's continual professional development points from listening to the BOFIN Buzz. So carry on listening for details about how to claim your point. Now, straight on to our first guest. And I'm really excited this week because we're going to be delving into new ground. Our guest this week is Dr. Stacia Stetkiewicz, who's assistant professor at the University of Nottingham. So, good day, Stacia.
Hi, Tom. Very excited to be here.
Fantastic. Well, they're very excited to have you here as well. Would you like to just explain a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am an interdisciplinary specialist. So my research focuses on bringing together insights from the natural sciences, plant biology, agricultural science, ecology, things like that, with the social sciences. And I try to identify where there are barriers to developing a more sustainable food system, and then work with stakeholders. So that might be farmers or consumers or policymakers or industry to try to come up with solutions so that we can overcome those barriers and develop the kind of sustainable food system that we
All
all
right.
need.
So, and this is why I'm really excited to have you on here, Stacia, because we've had scientists before, but they've usually been pathologists or biologists, entomologists, and things like that. And these are the scientists that we're used to working with in farming. But your discipline is different. Is it safe to call it social science? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah. So I definitely use a lot of social science methods in my research, and I think that there's a growing need for that kind of work and a growing understanding of that kind of research in this area. But it's certainly unusual
So,
still.
why? Why is there a growing need, do you think?
Well, I think so I guess I should preface by saying, so I come from a sort of natural sciences background. I did my undergraduate degree in plant biology, and I realized over the course of that degree that a lot of the examples I was learning about, we ended up in a situation where scientists are in the lab, they're in their university, they're developing something new and exciting and interesting that they think is going to save the world and change the way we do everything. And then it never really makes it out into the real world. Maybe they release it and farmers say, well, I can't use that because it doesn't fit in with the timings on my farm, or there's some kind of practical issue that the scientist just hasn't really considered because they've never left the lab and gone out into the field. And I saw a lot of that in my undergraduate degree, and it got me really interested in this idea of, can we develop these things together? Can we bring the scientists together with the farmers, with the industry, and say, what are the problems? How do we overcome them? And I think that as we're starting to deal with kind of climate change impacts and policy changes, and we have all of these issues that are coming at the same time, it's really important that we get everyone around the same table and talking to one another and having these conversations so we don't waste our time developing things that are
Yeah,
no
you've
use.
got a really good point there, actually, because so much of things like climate change, as you highlight there, are tied up in social perceptions, as well as the science, and it's about understanding those social perceptions, and how they then affect you. And also, I mean, you highlighted there the farmer barriers, that there may be barriers to, for example, taking on new technologies and things like that, and perceptions around that. But another area that farmers are faced with increasingly is where there is a consumer barrier, if you like, to certain farming methods. Classic one here is the sort of tussle that goes on about glyphosate.
Mm.
I would suggest that most farmers feel that glyphosate is okay, and perhaps there is a certain sector of society that believes that glyphosate is not okay, and farmers don't understand why that barrier exists. And these are the sorts of things that we face as farmers. Neonicotinoids, that's another one, where there is a sort of a perception barrier, and perhaps we can talk in more detail about that. But the area that we want to focus on today is in gene edited crops. And the reason for that is that we have just launched a new project called PROBITY, which is a platform to rate organisms bred for improved traits and yield. It's a £2.2 million farmer-led project funded by DEFRA's Farming Innovation Programme, and so delivered by Innovate UK. And we have 11 industry partners. It's a project that's led by BOFIN, and University of Nottingham are very much involved in it. Um, and hence why we want to talk today about gene edited crops. So we are bringing the first three gene edited cereals to commercial farms across Europe. I mean, this is a landmark moment, Stacia. It really is. But the reason that you're involved in this project is to do with gene edited crops. So, but for you, Stacia, bringing this project together, what are the sort of goals that you're really hoping to achieve within this project?
Well, one of the things I'm really interested in is I'm always on the lookout for new technologies and new innovations and ways that we can reduce the environmental impact of farming. And I think that gene editing gives us the potential to do that and to respond to some of the kind of issues that we have to deal with in agriculture in a very quick and efficient way. So I'm really interested to see how the farmers respond to this new technology, what they're interested in. We have obviously some crops that we have identified to start with in this project, but I also really want to know uh, what other traits farmers would like to see brought in the near future, and how they see this kind of developing in the next few years.
So, just thinking about the work that we're going to be undertaking within this project, Stacia, and I know that you've drawn up a plan, quite a detailed plan about how you're planning to, what you're going to do over the 3 years of the project. Could you just sort of talk us through some of the aspects of the work that you're going to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to be using a range of different techniques, different social science methods in this project. So the first thing that we'll be doing is a workshop, which hopefully will be happening at CropTech in November. If anybody is listening who would like to come along and join in that conversation, that will be a fairly informal discussion where we're trying to speak with farmers and those in the industry about this general area and kind of get a sense of what are people's perceptions, what are some of the key ideas that are coming out of these conversations, and that'll help to inform what we do later on in the project. So after that workshop, we'll have a series of interviews where we'll sit down with farmers who are going to be bringing these crops onto their farm and talk about how that's going, what's working, what's not working, how they're feeling about that whole process, what are some of the issues that they're encountering as they go through it, and are they getting the kind of expected benefits that we're hoping that they're going to be seeing on their farm, and also with the food industry at the same time around some of the same kind of topics, digging into the things that come out of that workshop, the general perceptions, the general concerns that are coming to us in a lot more depth. And then at the same time, we'll be having online conversations happening through the sequence circle on the farming forum, where we can get pretty much anybody involved who's interested in contributing to that conversation in a much less formal kind of setting. And you can just come on and have a chat about different aspects of the work that we're doing. And we'll be able to take all of that data afterwards and analyze it and see, if we're starting to see patterns in what people are concerned about, what people are excited about, what things are going well and not going so well, and really bringing the data together from all of these different ways of engaging with different people to get a more general understanding of the future for precision bred
Right.
crops.
Now, you touched there on the sequence circle. So, this is a new area on the Farming Forum that we're going to be introducing. And for those people who haven't been to the Farming Forum, do go to the Farming Forum and have a look in the Knowledge and Farming section. And you'll see in there are already a number of forums within there that are related to projects that BOFIN is involved in. So, there's the Pulse PEP for our Pulse project, the NCS project. And there is the Slug Circle for Slimers, which is our slug project. And then there's the Soil Circle for Truth, which is to do with soils and root health. And the discussion is already underway on those forums, and you can take part. And we really, really do want your involvement there. And talking about your experiences in those particular areas. We have farmers who are at the centre of the project, who are taking part in on-farm trials, who are talking about their trials within that area. We've got the scientists involved as well, contributing. And the sequence circle, which hasn't yet gone live, is one that we are going to be introducing. Now, one of the aspects that's different about the sequence circle that we're not doing with the others is so the others are a discussion forum, and it's all about bringing your views there for the benefit of everybody. But with the sequence circle, we're approaching things slightly differently, aren't we, Stacia? And you've touched on it there. It's more about, it's not only about we want to hear your views and so on and so forth. But we're doing slightly more than that. And you mentioned about the scientific analysis of that. Would you like to explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. So in social sciences, there are a number of traditional methods that we use, and one of them is textual analysis. So, what we'll be doing is essentially downloading the conversations that people are having on the forum and going through and looking for similarities that are coming out. Maybe multiple people have had a conversation back and forth about a specific topic, and interesting ideas have come out of that. Maybe new things that we want to be considering for targets for plant breeding, or maybe regulatory issues that we need to be considering and passing on to policymakers, looking out for kind of all of the the gold nuggets of the best bits of all of these conversations and synthesizing them into reports that we can then feed on to researchers, to policy, and to farmers, of course.
That's right. So it's not just about having the conversation. It's about getting the views and actually sort of condensing them into a report for, as you say, policymakers to benefit farmers and so on as well. But, I mean, I suppose. And that is, well, depending on how you look at it, that could be a positive or a negative. I mean, positive is that by contributing on the sequence circle, that you could actually help inform policy and regulation, and especially in this area of gene edited cereals, where things are so new and literally the legislation is being written as we speak. By contributing on the sequence circle, you could help that process. But at the same time, it's a little bit, people are analyzing my conversations. Am I happy with that? Am I comfortable with that? I mean, what safeguards have we got in place, Stacia, to make people feel comfortable about making their contributions on the sequence circle?
Yeah, it's a good point, and we want everyone to feel comfortable, definitely. It's at the moment I'm working my way through the ethics procedure here at the University of Nottingham. We have a very rigorous procedure where we have to set out in detail how we will be collecting data, how we will be storing that data, making sure that we meet all of the GDPR requirements and the data management plan requirements. Everyone's data will be completely anonymous. So we will be asking you to consider anonymity when you're writing your comments, and not to say, you know, the village that you live in, for example, or the name of your farm. But if you do accidentally let slip some personal information in your comments, we will remove that when we do the analysis. So you don't have to worry about being personally identified by anything that you've said. What we're doing really is looking at it as an aggregate of data. So we're kind of taking it a level up from your individual comment. So we won't be saying, well, Tom says that this is a great idea. We'll be saying, in general, farmers are in agreement about this particular thing. So we will be very careful with how we are collecting and storing and processing and analyzing all of that data, and making sure that we meet all of the requirements as we go through
Yeah,
that
so I mean,
process.
actually, I mean that's what really excites me about this project, Stacia, is that I think, and I don't know whether there's really a precedent here that we really, really are interested in farmers' views in this project, and those views could shape how this technology comes into effect in future years. And I really mean that in terms of not just how it's used on farm, but how it is legislated, how it is regulated, how the rest of the industry view it, and that's the really exciting thing. I guess is one of the great reasons that why one should get involved in this project, whether you support gene edited crops or not. And in fact, we really do want to hear from those people who don't support it, especially farmers. And I've spoken to a few. I know that there are some BOFIN members who have got serious reservations about it, and we really want to have those discussions and analyze them, and bring them to the fore. So it's I would suggest. I mean, my personal feeling here, Stacia, is that this is something to be welcomed, and not something to shy away from or be frightened about at all. But I just want to sort of drill down into specific aspects of precision bred cereals, that you're interested in exploring. Now, one of the things to say about precision bred cereals, we keep talking about precision bred cereals, and just to define what that is. So, gene editing is a number of technologies. I'm not going to go into too much detail about gene editing, but it is about precise edits that can be made in the genome that we can then bring through into crops. And it's the edits that the scientists can do mimic what could happen in nature, and it's something that happens quite frequently, as I understand. If you want more information on this, we have got videos, and we've got more information on the website probityproject.co.uk, with more information about gene edited cereals. But the specific gene editing that we're talking about within the project is precision bred, and this is a new definition under the Act that came in last year, where the edit could have happened naturally. And the idea of it being precision is it happens in a very precise area of the genome that the scientists know about. So that's specifically what we're looking at, and the three cereals that we're bringing through within the project are precision bred, and they have these precise edits within their genome. And we're going to be looking at the traits that that are conferred in the material because of that. So within that, so what are the specific elements that you're looking to that you're interested in exploring within these, this area of precision bred crops, then, Stacia?
Well, my background is really in low input systems and integrated pest management specifically. So I'm really excited to see some of the new things that are going to be coming through around resistance to specific pests and diseases. That's not going to be in our first generation of crops that we're trialing, but I think that um, we have picked out some traits that are going to be really interesting in terms of sustainability benefits and making sure that these are crops that meet multiple kind of win-wins. I guess they give us benefits across a range of different things. But of course, I'm excited um, for the increased disease resistance and the ability to be more reactive to new pests and new diseases that are coming into the UK, rather than having very long windows of time where we're trying desperately to develop new varieties. Being able to do it, in the matter of just a few years, is going
Yeah,
to be
well,
very
just to
exciting.
drill down into the specific traits that we're looking at. So the first three that we've got coming through, we've got two wheats and a barley. So one of the wheats is low acrylamide wheats. So this is acrylamide is a carcinogen that occurs naturally when you bake or toast wheat. It comes from asparagine, which is a natural amino acid in wheat. So this is Professor Nigel Holford at Rothamsted Research, and him and his team have found the gene that creates asparagine. It's a couple of genes actually, and they've knocked out the gene through gene editing, and that causes low asparagine levels in the wheat. And he's done some initial field trials, small plot trials, which suggests that there's absolutely no yield drag. The wheat, it's a cadenza wheat, which is an old milling variety. And the cadenza, the non-edited cadenza, performs exactly the same in the field as the edited cadenza. The only difference is that when you then come to process it, it has very low asparagine levels, which confers low acrylamide in baked or toasted products. The advantage there is that gives food manufacturers much more leeway of flexibility in how they prepare, for example, biscuits and breakfast material without triggering high acrylamide levels. So potentially tastier, healthier breakfast cereals and biscuits on the cards there. Uh, that's not going to tick your box for pests and diseases, Stacia. If we just look at the other two cereals, um, we've got we've also got bigger, bolder wheat. This is fielder wheat. This comes from John Innes Centre. This is Professor Cristobal Wowie and his team. And this, again, they found the gene that limits grain size. It occurs naturally in a wild wheat called Polonicum triticum. Triticum polonicum, I think it's called. And they found that gene. They've transferred it into modern wheat through gene editing. Sorry, no, that's wrong. They have found the gene which doesn't work in Triticum polonicum, and they've silenced it in modern wheat through CRISPR. And that is the one, that's the fielder that they're bringing out into the field within the project. The thing that really excites me about the fielder wheat is that it is something that could really we could really change agronomic practice here in
Okay,
terms of the way it's fed and the
that's
agronomy of
fun.
it and so on. Again, that's not going to tick
Sure.
your box for pests and diseases, I suppose, Stacia. The third one is a barley. This is a barley where they've developed it. This is Professor Peter Eastman and his team at Rothamsted again, who have edited this barley so that it produces high lipids in its leaves and stems. And the what they found there is the gene that limits the amount of
Yeah.
resources that are turned into
Yep.
lipids in the leaves and stems. So it stores more in the leaves and stems. The advantage in a barley is not that interesting, I suppose, but it's the forage that comes from that because it's high lipid. You can produce a high energy forage. Again, you wouldn't produce forage from barley, but the edit that's been made in the barley, they're hoping to be able to transfer into ryegrass, which would be obviously of great advantage. So we're looking at it in barley. We're hoping to test it through cows, test it to dairy cows to see whether it really does transfer into the yield. Productivity benefits, as well as methane emissions, lower methane emissions. There's a lot of science that suggests that high energy forage could lower methane emissions, but still doesn't tick the box for pests and diseases. But let me tell you that this is part of a pipeline of varieties that we're bringing through, and I can tell you, which you'll be quite excited about, that just coming through are some low yellow rust varieties. So yellow rust. The I don't know exactly what the edit is here. I don't know the full details of it. But this is work that's been going on at John Innes Centre, where they've zeroed down on some genes that confer yellow rust in varieties, and that is something that is coming through shortly. There, and I understand there's also some really exciting pest resistant wheats that are on the cards. Iron, high zinc as well,
Yes, but
coming
I
through within some of these edited cereals. So I don't know whether that's something that excites you, Stacia.
absolutely. No, that's great. I mean, I think one of the things that's so nice about this technology is that list that you've just given. It's so varied. There's so many different things that we can do with this technology. There's so many different ways that we can use it to completely change the way that we're producing food. And for some systems, you're going to be more concerned about one thing than others. And we need that variation. So I think that's very
Yeah,
exciting.
no, I can't wait to get underway. Really, as you say, the timetable on this is once we've got the ethical approval and so on, and we've gone through all the hurdles, we will be launching the sequence circle. As you say, it will be launched at CropTech in November 27th, I think is the date. And we will be holding an event as well, and really like as many of our BOFIN members to come to that, especially those who are involved in our projects. But anyway, more details on that will be coming shortly. One thing I wanted to find out from you, Stacia, uh, before we end this part of the podcast, is the barriers that you see. When I say barriers, what sort of or the challenges, if you like, that you foresee when gathering farmer perceptions on precision bred crops. What sort of challenges do you think we're going to face in this project?
Yeah. So the main challenge that I face in basically all the research that I do is getting farmers to
Right.
talk to me and give me their views on things. So I'm very excited to be working with BOFIN because I think that hopefully that's going to be a little bit less of a challenge this time round than it usually is when it's just me standing at a cereals event waving and hoping that people take a moment to come and chat. But I think once we get past that, then there's this whole layer of uncertainty. And there's always uncertainty when you have a new technology, a new innovation, when you're trying to change things and you don't necessarily know how it's going to go. But with this particular issue, we also have uncertainty around regulation, uncertainty about paperwork, uncertainty about market developments in the future. And I think that um, it's important that we discuss that and that we kind of map out where those uncertainties are and how we might be able to address some of those. But I also don't want to get too bogged down in that uncertainty because I'm really interested in understanding um, people's hopes for this technology, the things that they're skeptical about, the things they're concerned about, the potential pros and cons, and just thinking about, if we can get past that initial roadblock of not really knowing exactly how the market is going to look in a couple of years, what could we achieve? What would you like to achieve? What would be the ideal vision in this area? And getting people to sort of move towards that longer term view of it will be a little bit challenging, but I think we can get
Yeah,
there.
no, I think so too. And just to remind, well, not to remind, just to inform all of our listeners that, I mean, first of all, Stacia, I'd just like to point out that anyone who listens to the the Boffin Buzz podcast, and all of our members are among the most progressive and forward-thinking farmers in the UK. And I would hope that they would be very open to talking to you. I mean, having said that, we all get rung up every day for our views on this, that, and t'other, and
Yes.
God knows how many surveys. In fact, I've already taken part in 2 surveys today, and so there is a
Wow.
certain amount of survey fatigue, and just to let
Yeah.
everyone know that. When it comes to some of the more in-depth interviews and things like that, we are we will be rewarding farmers for their time in terms of their involvement within the project, and there'll be more details on that to come. So do keep an eye out for that. And of course, one of the hallmarks of all of the projects that we have is that farmers who take part in on-farm trials do get paid for their involvement as part of that. So not only will your views be counted and count towards the future of gene edited crops, but you will be rewarded for your time as well for those people who give up an amount of their time to help with the project. So there's that aspect. And so I hope that you get plenty of farmers who are very keen to talk to you, Stacia. But it's interesting the other aspect that you talk about as well, this uncertainty. And that it really does surround gene more than any other technology. I think so. We do have quite a challenge there. I mean, how do you think that uncertainty compares with sort of other areas of innovation? For example, a new chemical or a new approach or
Hmm.
whatever. Is there a sort of fundamental difference there? Do you think?
I think so. I think, when we're talking about a new chemical, you are building that to fit within the system that already exists, right? So you want to, as a company, you want to develop something that can be sprayed using equipment that you already have. Farmers are already aware of how to mechanically do that. But when you're talking about something like the bigger, bolder wheat that you were mentioning before, we don't really know what that is going to look
Mm.
like in field yet. We don't really know how that might change your agronomic decision making. We don't know very much, to be perfectly honest. And so I think there is just more fundamental uncertainty, but at the same time, there's more potential for really exciting step changes in the way that we're doing things. And since England is kind of at the forefront of this, it's a chance for us to make a real contribution for the whole
Yeah.
world as well and show them the way forward so they have a bit less uncertainty when they
Yeah,
come to do it.
no, absolutely, and that's interesting. So on the one hand, we've got the sort of trepidation, whatever, And quite rightly, because the thing about farming is that you only have a year, especially arable farming. You can only make one set of changes per year. Whereas in other industries, perhaps, if you're making widgets or whatever, you can make a change, and then the next day you can make a different change. Can't really do that with farming. You need to get the results before you can make the next change. But at the same time, there is, as you say, that excitement, the excitement of the unknown. But let's leave it there for the moment, Stacia, because we're going to go on to that's as much as we can really fit in to today's session of the BOFIN Buzz. But we will be returning to this topic, so do look out for part two of this interview as well. But in the meantime, if you want to claim your basis points, basis members can now claim one CPD point after listening to this podcast. So, the first half of this, what you need to do is take the code, and I'm going to give you the first half of the code today within this episode of the BOFIN Buzz. If you then listen to part two of this podcast, you can pick up the second part of the code, and then send that in to the email is cpd@basis-reg.co.uk. So that is CPD, Charlie Papa Delta, at basis-reg.co.uk to claim your point. And the first half, wait for it, is capital P for Papa, capital N for Nano, /139558. So that's PN/139558. And listen out for the other part of the code in part two. So that's it for today's BOFIN Buzz. Thank you very much, Stacia. We will be back with Stacia to pick up more on precision-bred crops, more on probity, and more on the fascinating science that is social science that Stacia is looking at. And we're going to be looking at some more aspects of that in part two. So thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.